Hi everyone, my name is Penny, and today I'll be discussing an important part of the U.S. Constitution, the 10th Amendment. While it may not be as famous as others like the First or the Second Amendment, it plays a crucial role in defining the powers between the federal government and the states. In this presentation, I'll explain what the 10th Amendment says, how it came to be, important court cases that shaped its meaning, and how it still affects American politics today. So what is the 10th Amendment? The 10th Amendment is part of the Bill of Rights, and it was added to the Constitution in 1791. It states simply that any powers not given to the federal government and not prohibited to the states belongs to the states or the people. This language sets a clear boundary, emphasizing that the federal government's powers are limited and that states retain significant authority. Though short, this sentence has fueled many debates about who controls what in America's federal system. The 10th Amendment came from intense debates during the ratification of the Constitution. Federalists like Alexander Hamilton believed a Bill of Rights was unnecessary because the government only had the powers that were listed in the Constitution. But Anti-Federalists feared the federal government might grow too powerful without explicit protections. To gain their support, Federalists promised to add a Bill of Rights. The 10th Amendment was included to reassure states and citizens that their powers and their rights would be protected. James Madison, who is often called the father of the Constitution, played a key role in these debates. In the Federalist Paper number 45, Madison explained that the powers granted to the federal government are few and defined, while those left to the states are numerous and indefinite. This was meant to assure Americans that state governments would keep most of their traditional authority. The 10th Amendment reflects this important division and continues to guide the balance of power. In 1819, the Supreme Court faced a critical case called McCulloch versus Maryland. Maryland had tried to tax a branch of the national government, arguing that Congress had no constitutional power to create such a bank. This challenged federal authority and raised questions about the limits of Congress's power under the Constitution. The case became one of the earliest tests of the federal versus state power under the 10th Amendment. Chief Justice John Marshall delivered the unanimous decision, ruling in favor of the federal government. He said Congress had implied powers under the Necessary and Proper Clause, not just those written explicitly in the Constitution. Creating a bank was a reasonable way to carry out Congress's other powers, like taxing and borrowing money. He also emphasized that federal laws are supreme over state laws, reinforcing the strength of the national government. Marshall famously wrote, "Let the end be legitimate, and all means which are appropriate are constitutional." This set the precedent that Congress can take necessary actions to fulfill its duties, even if those actions are not specifically listed in the Constitution. This ruling expanded federal power, while also confirming that states could not interfere with legitimate federal activities. It remains a cornerstone of constitutional law today. Jumping ahead to 2012, the Supreme Court ruled on the National Federation of Independent Businesses versus Sebelius, which challenged the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. The court considered whether Congress could require people to buy health insurance and whether it could force states to expand Medicaid by threatening to withhold federal funds. This case raised complex questions about federal power under the Commerce Clause and the limits imposed by the 10th Amendment. The court issued a split decision. It ruled that the individual mandate was unconstitutional under the Commerce Clause, but valid under Congress's power to tax. On Medicaid, the court said Congress could offer funds for expansion, but could not coerce states by threatening to cut off all Medicaid funding. This important limitation protected states' rights and emphasized that the federal government cannot force states to comply, a principle rooted in the 10th Amendment. In recent years, the 10th Amendment has gained renewed attention as states push back against federal policies on hot-button issues. For example, several states have passed sanctuary laws limiting cooperation with federal immigration authorities. These states argue the federal government cannot compel them to enforce federal immigration laws, citing the 10th Amendment to support their position. This reflects ongoing tensions over federalism in modern America. Another major issue involves abortion rights. After the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in the 2022 case Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, the authority to regulate abortion was returned to the states. This has led to a patchwork of laws, with some states protecting access and others enacting strict bans. This shift highlights how the 10th Amendment empowers states to make their own policy choices on deeply divisive topics. So in conclusion, the 10th Amendment has been a fundamental part of American federalism since the country's founding. From early cases like McCulloch v. Maryland, to modern decisions like the National Federation of Independent Business versus Sebelius and ongoing state debates, it continues to shape the balance of power between states and the federal government. It reminds us that while federal power is important, the rights and power of states remain vital to our democracy. Thanks for listening.